This is the Marketing Agency Power Hour, and I'm your host, Cal Wilder. Each week, we'll power through discussions on business challenges, success stories, and game-changing strategies. This show is sponsored by SmartBooks, provider of bookkeeping and accounting for marketing agencies. Let's get started. So I'm really excited to talk to today's guest. He's a visionary marketing leader, a sought-after thought leader, a forward-thinking AI enthusiast, a compelling writer, and a magician. He's an expert strategist who scales brands from $0 to $100 million with a repeatable method. He's known for an analytical approach to marketing that drives sales, boosts conversions, and consistently exceeds targets. He's CEO of Ellusionist. He is the co-founder of MTHD Marketing. Geraint Clarke, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Carl. I really appreciate it. What a lovely intro. You make me sound great. Can you put that on my headstone?
Sure. So, Geraint, what's the single most powerful strategy for success in your agency these days?
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, I'd say like 90% of our leads come from Google Ads. So we're an official Google Ads partner, but we practice what we preach because we actually do Google Ads to bring in clients for our own agency as well, not just doing Google Ads for other people, but doing it for ourselves too.
So how do you go about focusing your Google Ads campaigns?
Yeah, I mean, mostly it's figuring out the offer. A lot of people don't know what they're selling. And, to begin with, we cast a really broad net. And we see where the clicks and conversions come from. So in our case, we're a full service agency. We were able to go after social media marketing. We were able to go after SEO because we have all those people in place at the agency. But we saw what people were reacting to and what case studies they were reading and what testimonial videos would help convert. We kind of zeroed in on what people come to us for the most, and then we refined our offer around that. So it's a very strategic approach, and we were open to be malleable. I think in the beginning, a lot of people are dead set on what they do and their product, but you react to the market and kind of see what the people really need. And for us, it was focusing more on websites and marketing campaigns.
So you kind of took an approach seeing what people are looking to buy and then see if you can deliver that.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have a marketing agency to begin with. So it was very different for us. When we were starting, we weren't necessarily attached to anything, if that makes sense. So we were able to pivot quickly, knowing, okay, well, this is what we're looking at. If we're going to start a business in this area, like just to backtrack for people listening, perhaps, Cal mentioned that I'm a magician. Ellusionist is actually a website that teaches people how to do magic tricks. So it teaches normal people how to do incredible magic tricks. We built a team around that e-com company. And when we took that to a Alex Hormozy business conference, they were like, okay, you kill it with marketing. You guys kill it with marketing. And people heard the stories. They were like, around the convention, they were talking, around the workshop, they were talking. And I left with a few people asking me to run their ads. So we weren't ever intending to become a marketing agency, but we just ended up in that position where people were asking us to do the marketing. We assumed everyone was as good as us. And then when we heard all the horror stories, it was like, okay, actually we could be really effective in this niche.
So your story is you had a magic trick business.
Yeah, still do.
You still do. And then you were really good at marketing that. And then you decided, hey, people want to hire me to do marketing for them.
Yeah.
So that's your story. Wow.
Crazy, isn't it?
How long did you have the Ellusionist going on its own before you got into the marketing business?
Yeah, so I've been running Ellusionist for the last 10 years, starting in the digital marketing department. and then ended up as CEO. I took over as CEO in 2021. So yeah, I've been working with Ellusionist for 10 years. But the business itself is over 2 decades old. It's over 20 years old. Um, so it existed. It was built by somebody else before me. I just kind of came in over the last decade and helped scale that business. And yeah, I think from our perspective, we didn't really have everything worked out until we started. And I think this is maybe a lesson for a lot of people, is that we didn't want to dedicate 100% of our resources to something that we didn't know was going to work. So we just took 2 staff members to go off and start the agency and see whether it would work. And then once we had confirmation that it would work, then we moved people across, hired new people to scale the agency. And now we treat Ellusionist as a client. So we treat the magic business, that e-com business, as a client of the marketing agency.
And so you're primarily focused on Google Ads, you said, or what's the breadth of services that you provide?
Yeah, we do everything. So it's full service. So we do websites, CRO work, copywriting, email marketing, videos, and then we do Meta and Google ads primarily. We don't touch TikTok or Pinterest or anything like that. And although we're familiar with SEO, we don't sell SEO because there's no way of measuring results, where paid ads are very quick to measure results. So with SEO, to convince a client to invest for 6 months before they'd potentially see a return, it adds a lot of pressure on the business in a changing landscape. Search is going more towards LLMs like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Grok. So we made a conscious effort to stay away from that. But everything else is kind of what we offer.
Okay. So what kinds of clients do you work with? A lot of business to consumer, or what kinds of clients?
Yeah, some B2B and some B2C. It's dependent on what people need. I mean, look, the principles of marketing are the same. So whenever I speak to somebody, they say, do you have any clients in the pharmaceutical niche? And I say, really, the only reason you're asking me that question is so I can show you results that someone else has got that could potentially be replicated for you too. But ultimately, the principles are the same, which is you just have to identify where people's customers are hiding and then go there. So if you're advertising something to middle-aged women, it's going to be a different platform and a different approach to advertising to young men, as an example. They're not all going to be found in the same place. So a lot of work is put into who are the ideal customer for that business and where do they reside, which platform do they use the most, what business are they in, what job title do they have, what income level do they have, and that helps with the targeting.
So how do you figure that out?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's businesses will know to some degree, who they're going after based on like an 80-20 analysis of who their customers are. If they don't, there's a lot of data within Shopify. And the 80-20 principle, Pareto's law, is something that we swear by. So give you a perfect example. There's a client of ours, it was Chelsea Method, and they sold workouts to pre and postnatal women. So it's very easy for us to understand how to target those people because it's just women who are about to have a baby or have just had a baby. So there's an age group there and there's a gender demographic there that makes the targeting much, much easier. And then we work with a client called Crockett Doodles, and they were selling, they basically do the training for puppies. So they'll, allow you to get like a fully trained puppy. They'll take over the boarding and the training of your puppy. So you get, toilet train, everything.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah, no wonder they're doing so well. It's such a good service. And, initially we thought, okay, this is easy. It will predominantly be women who are going to buy this. And what we learned from the data initially was that actually men were converting much higher on certain platforms. So yeah, we're prepared to be wrong. You test in the beginning and you'll know from the initial few days whether something's working or something isn't. And not everything works straight away. That's kind of a myth too. Everyone talks about the success stories, but a lot of it is testing. You go with your gut and maybe it works and it's fantastic. And sometimes the data will take you in a different direction. So if men are converting more on Instagram and women are converting more on Facebook, then we turn the other ones off. So we turn off women on Instagram, we turn off men on Facebook, if that makes sense. But we're really looking for, whatever the client's metrics are. Is there a cost per lead? Is there a cost per conversion that's dictating whether or not this will be profitable? And if it is, then we kind of set the metrics to that level and then work towards that. And if it goes above it, we don't have an ego about it. We'll just turn it off. If it didn't work, we'll just turn it off. So yeah, we're really just zeroing in on where the data is showing it and where it's showing it to be most profitable.
What kind of a budget does the client need to have in order to have enough power in their campaign to be able to discern what's working and what's not working?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a controversial subject because the reality is, and I want to be honest with the audience, and I don't want people to assume that you can get rich overnight with, $10 in your pocket. It takes money to make money. And the more money you have, the better results you'll get because you'll be able to test more ad variants and you'll be able to fail faster and quicker in order to get to the right answer. So there are now rules in place with these ad platforms. Meta, you have to have 50 conversions before you can exit the learning phase. And with Google, it has to be 30 conversions within 30 days to exit the learning phase. Which means for these pixels and these ad platforms to be delivering the best, you need to have a good volume of conversions. And you're only going to get that if you've got enough budget. So depending on the size of the offer, if you sell a high ticket product for 5K, then you're gonna need at least 5 to 10K in order to kind of make sure that's effective. And if you sell a $50 item, you need at least $50 a day because you want at least one conversion a day to exit that learning phase. So it depends really on the size of your offer. But I'd say that the lowest minimum threshold for everyone should be $50 a day.
Okay. So we're talking about what you do for clients and a little bit about how you do that. But, what are your objectives with your own agency? How do you measure success?
Yeah. I mean, look, like I said, we didn't intend to become a marketing agency. So it wasn't really a goal that we set. And because the e-com business was paying our way anyway, we didn't really have a dream monetary figure to consider it as a good job. So the initial goal I set was like, if the agency could like pay everyone's wages, then we'd be happy because we've got the e-com business making, money over here, and then we've got the agency making money over here. And you end up in a position where they both increase the profit for each other because the agency covering staffing bills makes the e-com company more profitable. And then the e-com company being more profitable takes the pressure off any of the increased costs on the agency. So, yeah, I mean, if we could, an arbitrary figure, if we could kind of grow to like 500 clients, I think it would be great. But we've already achieved goals that we said would make us happy.
And you don't want to forget that. That's important.
Yeah, you have to take stock sometimes as to like where you are and how far you've come and like appreciate the hard work that you did put in. So, yeah, I mean, we're not greedy. We have a very good life. So, if we can grow to that point, great, but we're not necessarily stressed about it.
Yeah. And where are you joining me from?
I'm in the UK right now. I just got back from Las Vegas 2 weeks before that, I was in New York with clients as well. So it's been a bit of a crazy month for traveling, but yeah, back home, I've got a month at home to really relax.
And where are most of your clients based?
Yeah, primarily in the US. So we do a lot of business in the US.
So you're based in the UK, doing business in the US. How does that work? How do you get new business and manage the clients? I would assume people in the US might default to using an agency based in the US. What's that dynamic like?
Yeah, so 10 years ago when I started working, with Ellusionist, it was remote, and that was a scary prospect for a lot of businesses to hire somebody, across the ocean in a remote capacity, not knowing if they're working, not knowing if they could produce results, are you going to lose money? But since COVID, the world went remote. People start working from home, and then because they're working from home, they can work from anywhere. They can work from a beach, they can work from a cafe, coffee shop, anything. So the idea of hiring internationally really doesn't, scare a lot of people. And the business itself is American. It's just me that happens to be in the UK. But we've got staff all over. We've got staff in the US, we've got staff in California, staff in Wyoming, staff in New York, Florida. We've got some in Toronto, Germany, Ireland, and the UK. So everyone communicates on Slack and via email, and we have catch-up calls with clients, but it's not that much of a time difference. It's like 5 hours for the majority of our clients. And, a morning call for a client is an afternoon call for us. So it's not really an issue.
Right. Cool. So are you a magician by background? Like, did you start out as a magician earlier in your career? Maybe you still are?
Yeah, I mean, I still know a few tricks. Obviously, like running a magic company, you pick up a few things. But yeah, I mean, I started as a magician when I was 16. So 16 years old, and I would work in cocktail bars and perform tricks for people close up. And
How did you learn? How did you get your start?
I learned from Ellusionist. That's the weird full circle nature of that, which was I started learning from Ellusionist, which was a business that existed before me, and then ended up being CEO of that company, fast forward 15 years later. So yeah, I learned from that company. It was DVDs and books and, gadgets and gimmicks, but I still know a few things. I break it out at family parties and, if somebody asks, but I don't perform anymore.
Remember when I was a kid, I'd always try to figure out how they did the tricks. And it was very hard. I didn't know something like Illusionist existed that could explain some of the tricks.
There's an interesting story, actually. The founder of Illusionist, Brad, he used to be a waiter in New York City. And I think he was hired for a private event where he was a waiter at somebody's house party. And he was doing a few tricks to the guests' children. And they were blown away. And the guests came over and they said, "Hey, I'll give you $20 if you can teach me that trick, because I want to be my kid's hero." And he realized then, oh my God, there's a market for people who would pay to learn just one trick, and to be able to do it well as a beginner, as a novice. They'd be able to just learn one, do it for their kids, do it for their family members. So that's how he started.
And so you're 16. Take me back. You start performing, and then how do you actually get engaged formally with the Illusionist as the business?
Yeah. So obviously I was 16. I was doing gigs, on weekends, after school, things like that. And I ended up writing a book on card magic. So I sold that online. And when I went to my interview for university to kind of go and do my university degree when I was like 18, 19, I told them I self-taught myself Photoshop, how to build a website, some things regarding marketing, online checkouts. And they were blown away, and they gave me an unconditional, which basically means we don't care what your exam results are. We want you to be on this course. And did my university degree, got out of university, and just started with entry-level marketing jobs. And then I was marketing for, in the UK, it's called the third sector. And the third sector is basically volunteers and charities. And I was doing marketing there. And I was on an all staff day. And I get a phone call from a magician in the industry. And he's like, I heard Ellusionist has a marketing job going. They have a job, for someone who knows marketing, but also knows magic. And I put myself forward for it. I didn't hear back for like 3-4 days, and then got a phone call from the founder saying, you've got the job, which was perfect for me because it was a mix of something that I loved as well as something I was qualified in. So I ended up, having a very, very synergistic, easy start to my career quite early on. I think I was 23 when I joined Ellusionist. So, but imagine that. Imagine being able to do your passion for your job. It's really nice.
And how many years went by before you got pulled into doing marketing for other businesses?
Yeah, so we started this agency, Method Marketing. We started this in 2024. So yeah, I was doing 10, 11 years for Ellusionist before we started this.
Cool. And based on your experience, have you learned something that you wish you knew, 5, 10 years ago that would have been really helpful? If you could give yourself some advice back in the day, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, the number one thing I've learned recently is selling expensive things. So I know it doesn't sound like a revelation, but it is. If you sell, we've got a client who sells like $11 mascara for a makeup company. Now, to make $100K, let's kind of do the math on that now. If this person wants to make $100,000 with $11 mascara, they've got to sell 9,090 mascaras. But if we want to make 100K, we've got to sell 10 websites. So they've got to get 9,090 customers. We've got to get 10. So the more expensive thing of what you sell, the easier it'll become, because you have to sell less customers to sell expensive things to make the same amount of money. So yeah, that's the number one lesson. With Ellusionist, we were selling $10 decks of cards. And when you think about it, to sell 10,000 of them, it sounds fantastic. But finding 10,000 customers is not, or convincing people to buy 2 and finding 5,000 customers. It's not a profitable endeavor in the long term, because you're doing a lot of customer acquisition. But yeah, if you sell an expensive item, your customer acquisition cost becomes negligible. Because even if you spend $1,000 to get that $10,000 customer, you're still making 90% profit margin. So yeah, that's the number one. If I could leave people with something, it would be, cheap products are much, much harder to market online, because your customer acquisition cost has to be worked in as well as the cost of the product itself.
That sounds counterintuitive to some people, right? Like, you want to be, cheap online because everybody's shopping online, but you're saying sell something expensive because then your cost of customer acquisition becomes less important.
Exactly. And if you were selling a consumable, so let's say it was something people need. Let's just say your cell phone bill. It pays to be cheap for your cell phone bill because you need it every single month. So you're going to need data, you're going to need calls, you're going to need text messages every single month. And that's why all of those businesses compete on price, because it's a recurring consumable. It needs to be cheap, but they can win based on LTV. So their LTV, their lifetime value of each customer. You may be with that provider for 2 years. You may be with that provider for 10 years. So the LTV of that customer is through the roof. And now they can afford to spend big money to get you. But if you sell something that isn't repurchased, or the people don't repurchase often enough, then you're losing profit. So if you're selling like a one-off hoodie as an example. Let's just take this hat as an example. This is a Ralph Lauren hat. I think I paid like $50 for this hat, but they can only sell me this once. Maybe I'll buy this hat. I might buy another one in 4 years' time. But the cost to acquire me as a customer worked into the profit margin is huge in comparison to selling something super expensive.
Yeah, now you're talking my language. Talking my language, Geraint. I look at everything as an investment. Right. And so what are you getting for a return on investment? The
Yeah.
marketing is an investment.
Yeah. Cost per use is another thing, isn't it? My mother-in-law told me this. She had an expensive chandelier. And I said, how much did you pay for that? And she was like, yeah, cost per use though. I turn that light on every single day. So she's like, if you divide it by the 10 years I've had it, per day that I turn it on, it's pennies.
So you've clearly thought through a lot of these issues. How do you go about managing the accounting and finance at your business?
Yeah, we have a bookkeeper. They're full-time on staff with us. It's required because obviously we have the agency, but we also have the e-com business. So we're able to have that bookkeeper across both businesses. If it was just a one, we'd probably struggle to, keep that person in a full-time position. But because we have both businesses, it's easy to have somebody on staff.
And what kind of reports and metrics do you get so that you can feel like you have a good handle on how your business is performing financially and make prudent decisions?
Yeah, I get a P&L every month. So, your body fills with anxiety the day before the P&L. Is it good news? Is it bad news? And yeah, the bookkeeper puts something together and just shows the profit and loss for the month as well as for the year on a, year-to-date basis. And I have a pretty good handle of it anyway because I'm approving invoices. Being CEO, you have to kind of approve invoices. I check the bank account every day. I see what goes into Stripe. So I can see when things are great and when things aren't. And I usually, some customers don't pay up front. They might pay once at the end of June, but they might pay their second half of their bill in August. So, July might take a blip down slightly, but I have the rationale of like, okay, it's because these 3 customers are paying their second half in August. So yeah, working with Jenna, who heads up our finance, getting that P&L, watching the bank account every day, checking our Stripe account every day, it gives me a good handle on everything.
And have you had any challenges operating in multiple countries?
Not really. No. I'd say the biggest challenge really is the cultural difference. From France to Dubai to Saudi Arabia, anytime we take a client outside of like the Western civilization of like UK, US, Canada, that's a big cultural shift for us. But there's no challenges really in operations. It's quite seamless.
Hmm. So what could you give me an example or a story of one of those challenges, cultural challenges that you had to overcome and what you learned from it?
Yeah, I mean, look, I guess from a Dubai perspective, because that's probably the one that the people ask about the most. Dubai is essentially ran on an app called WhatsApp from Meta. So people do business via WhatsApp. They don't do email. If they sign up with you, they're expecting you to send them a WhatsApp. So whenever we get a lead from Dubai, we kind of forget our usual call booking system and we just send them a WhatsApp from my phone. So that's an example. And if you do, I'm not religious myself, but a salam alaikum to somebody in Dubai, it's just peace be upon you. And it's just a very polite greeting to them culturally. So yeah, being aware of things like that is super helpful in order to deal with clients internationally. So if you've got a grasp on those things, it really does help.
How do you, well, the answer might be great Google Ads, but how do you get clients in Dubai when you're in England and your people are in the US, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously primarily we serve the US, even though I myself am in the UK. The majority of our people are in the US serving US clients. And it's just Google Ads. So location wise, and I'll share this too, which is the US is obviously the world's biggest economy, which is helpful, but it's also where people look for talent. So if you're in Dubai and you're looking for a marketing agency that's good, you're not looking for a marketing agency in Dubai. You're looking for a marketing agency that's considered good within the US. And then you'll use those from where you are in Dubai. So that happens with a lot of territories. A lot of people in Canada would rather hire a US marketing agency. A lot of people in the UK would rather hire a US marketing agency. So the US carries a lot of weight when it comes to those decisions.
Are you seeing any challenges? We see all these political headlines and you never really know what to believe, but you seeing any impact around the world where you do business with the perception of US businesses or doing business with people in the US?
No, I'd say there's an air of optimism around the US politically right now, which is, it's kind of antithetical to what the mainstream media will say. But I do feel like the current president of the US, because perception is reality, given the fact that he's a businessman, people assume that the first thing he will do is prioritize the economy. And then they see, all-time highs on Bitcoin, all-time highs in the stock market, all-time highs on Ethereum, or I don't know if it's all-time high, but it's definitely shooting up. They see the investments from Saudi, they see AI taking off, and I think they get this feeling of comfort. So there's definitely more hope, I would say, in or more, even more expectation in what people assume their business can achieve now in this macroeconomic environment as opposed to a year ago.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah.
What excites you about the future?
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm kind of, it's maybe a boring answer, but I don't really look ahead that far. I'm looking to like next week. We're so busy that sometimes I assume something hasn't been done in months. And when I check the data, it was 10 days ago. So we're operating at such a speed and things are changing so quickly that when we get to a position where it's like, where it's, I don't know, where we have the time to even plan ahead into like 5 years from now, I think we'll do that. But right now it's like, we're just focused on what we can do next week. And we're looking back at the trends. And as we're going up month to month, it's making a lot of sense to us that we're doing the right thing because we can see continual growth. But we don't really have major goals for like the next 3 to 5 years. It's just keep going. I'm 35. I'm still quite young. I want to build something for, me and my children, but also my team, like my co-founder, Oba, and my co-founder, Brad. I want to build something that supports them and their families forever as well. So yeah, long-term goal is fluid. We're kind of just doing what we do, which I know is probably a boring answer to people, but hey, look, I've seen everything in business. Over the last 10 years, I've seen it all. I've seen the ups and I've seen the downs, and people congratulate you when things are going well. But I've also been $500,000 in debt before and had to dig myself out of that. So things will happen like COVID, like war, like macroeconomic downturns that you can't plan for. So I tend to be a lot more appreciative when things go well, but with some level of expectation that like this won't continue forever. We need to, keep making the right decisions while we can, but something can go wrong in the world through no fault of your own, can wipe out your business. So it's always worth kind of, keeping that in the back of your mind as well. Is that pessimistic, Cal, or is that real?
Yeah. Well, that's how a lot of business owners operate, right? You can create long-term plans, but at the end of the day, you've got to manage the business this week.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, look, we kind of went into a pivot that looks like it's going to be more lucrative and profitable in the next like year or two than the e-com business was over 20 years, because it's a much, much bigger market and a much bigger niche. So I hold out, some level of realism too, to the idea that, well, like, we didn't know 2 years ago that we were going to pivot and start a marketing agency. We didn't know. So sometimes you kind of go with where the wind is taking you. And, it doesn't mean that you're going to do everything that ever comes to your mind, but there are some things that like make sense.
Cool. What do you like to do outside of work?
Yeah, I don't know if they've been distracted in the background. I've got a needy sausage dog there.
Yeah.
It's kind of tucking in under the blanket. So yeah, I mean, like, walking the dogs. I'm married, so, obviously hanging out with my wife and helping out with family and, music gigs and general stuff like that. But I'm a pretty quiet individual. My party days are over. I, very rarely drink or kind of do anything anymore. So, I'm quite focused on business. And I think there's some level of gamification to business that when you run a business, people will understand that it's a game and you get a lot of enjoyment from winning. And that will spur you on to like work harder. So I think maybe that resonates with some of your audience now. They'll be listening to this and they're like, yeah, me too. I'll spend Saturday working because I'm winning and it feels good. So yeah, if I've got free time outside of that, it's like normal family stuff. But otherwise, I'm very, very focused on work.
Yeah. It's interesting. They always say if you find something that you love and do it for a living, it doesn't feel like work. And I don't know if that's completely true, but certainly, you know, I found myself on a Saturday afternoon embroiled in spending a few hours doing some work that probably nobody else would care about, but it was really very exciting and interesting to me at the time. I was just working on trying to incorporate some AI into my workflow, and Thursday night, I was working on trying to figure out how to, create a pricing model using AI, analyzing our existing portfolio client data. So yeah, things come up that you just kind of put your head down and work on because it's fun, even though it looks like work to some people.
But, this is maybe something else that people could take away from this. I wrote a blog post on this years ago, and it was basically there's like two different kinds of careers. Okay. You're either a product or you're a service. So most people, they're working in a service-based business where they have an employer. That employer employs them to do a job, and then their earnings are capped. And because their earnings are capped, their enthusiasm and what they consider to be value is capped. So do you want to work a Saturday when you're not getting paid to work a Saturday? For 90% of people, they'll say, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. And if they do good work and they've got a manager above them that takes the credit and they don't get to have the recognition for themselves, then maybe they won't put in extra. So I fully sympathize with that too, which is some people have kids and busy home lives and they just want to do their job and go home. And because there's no reward for the extra work, they just won't do it. And then you could be a product-based business. A product-based business means, I don't mean the actual business itself, but I mean you as an individual worker, that you as a business, you're a product. Okay. And that's you owning a slice of whatever it is that you're doing. And when you own a slice of it, you get a slice of the rewards. And now you know that the extra effort you put in will come back to you in the growth of the company, in bonuses, in increased remuneration and pay, in hiring extra staff so you can work less. And now it becomes more achievable to put in those extra hours because you can see that you're going to get something for it. So yeah, maybe that's something else for people to think about too, which is like, do you own a marketing agency or have a slice of the performance? Are you on some kind of performance-based pay structure where when the business does well, you do well? Or are you just an employee? And if you're an employee, maybe that's why you don't like working extra. Maybe that's why you don't like following business as a hobby.
One of the things that's interesting, and I see, unfortunately, too many small business owners, they basically own a job, not a business. And when you own a job, you just have a job. It's not something that is necessarily highly fulfilling. It's not something you can sell. It's not something with unlimited upside. It's a job. And you own it. So maybe you have a little bit of flexibility, but basically you own a job. And I think that's very different than if you can figure out how to position your business where you own a business, where it operates without you. It's potentially saleable. You can go on vacation and everything still keeps working well, right? And so figuring out how to own a business versus owning a job is, I think one of the key challenges for small business owners just starting out.
For sure. And it starts like that. It starts as a job. And it starts as, a lot of people say, like, how do you grow so quickly? And the answer was, I worked evenings and weekends. And that's not a sexy answer. But I put in extra time in the beginning so that I can have time off later. And didn't answer any of my emails last week. My team is taking over whilst I was in Vegas. They're managing everything for me, but they can only do that because I worked evenings and weekends in the beginning. And, I see people now, you mentioned AI, you're running a business and you're using AI to unlock extra levels of productivity. There are some people offloading their work to AI instead. So they're not just using it as a tool, but there's like video editors that are using AI to edit their videos so they don't have to work. And they're doing nothing with the spare time rather than using the productivity gain to go do something else and like jump ahead. So yeah, it's a lot of hard work in the beginning. I remember Christmas Day was like my first day off from, I'd say, October to Christmas Day. So in like 2 months, that was my first day off. And then people now will be like, you're so lucky. You're so lucky. Like, how have you done this so quickly? You're so lucky. But they didn't see every, evening, every weekend, my first day off in like almost 3 months being Christmas Day. And I was straight back to it. So yeah, that's the reality of the situation.
Owning a small business is not as glamorous as it might appear sometimes. That's for sure.
But it gets better. Like I get days off now, but yeah, in the beginning, it's a lot of hard work.
Yeah. I remember a guy who was a mentor to me years back. He said, when he was young, he worked 7 days a week. Then he got married and he started taking Sundays off. And then he had kids and he took Saturday off too.
Yeah.
That's kind of how he approached his life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't have kids yet, but I said to my wife, I was like, just give me 1 year. Like, give me 1 year to get everything in place and like built out, because it's a massive time commitment in the beginning. So
Geraint, every time I talk to somebody in Britain, I always assume they're a football fan. Do you have a favorite team you root for?
I'm not a football fan, unfortunately.
Wow.
No, I yeah, just for the American listeners too. When Cal says football, he means soccer, and that's so huge over here in the UK. It's like a cult. People, people will go every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. They'll go to games, but yeah, I don't have a team. I follow the F1, the Formula One. It's a lot of Brits. Yeah, a lot of Brits in the F1, and sometimes I watch the UFC, which is the American Ultimate Fighting Championship. But I'm not really a massive sports fan. It's just F1, and that's really F1 and a bit of UFC. Do you follow F1, Cal?
A little bit. I did watch Drive to Survive,
Yeah.
the first couple seasons and kind of got me hooked a little bit, but I can't say I keep up with it regularly. I did go see the movie though with Brad Pitt, which I
Is it good?
loved. Oh yeah, very good, very
Good.
intense. I mean, it's long. It's like 2.5 hours, but you're sitting there, you're really excited about all the action going on the screen in front of you.
I'm glad to hear that. I haven't seen it yet, so I'm glad it's good. It's not been very many good movies out lately, has there?
I don't watch a lot of movies. Every now and then there's one like F1, like Top Gun Maverick. Like there's a few movies a year that.
You know, that's the same director.
Oh,
So the director that directed F1 is the director from Maverick.
Jerry Bruckheimer, was it Jerry
No,
Bruckheimer
he's the
or
producer.
producer? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. The director is the same director. But that's probably why you mentioned those two. It's the
Well,
same.
those are two movies where I feel like it's worth springing to go watch in a theater because of the immersive experience. Other movies you can just watch on TV and it's fine, but
Yeah.
every now and then there's a movie where like I bet the experience would be a lot better if I watched this in a theater.
Hmm. You know, this is a marketing thing, but I have a hypothesis that everything is a bubble. Everything. And it will always go in like the fashion cycle as an example. 2 years ago was fashion revival from the 90s. And it's because there's a trend, people jump into that trend and it grows into a bubble and then it bursts and everyone flocks to like what used to work or what they used to do. And then that will grow. So vinyl is very lucrative right now, but it's because everything has gone to streaming. So there'll be people who are doing the opposite of that thing. They'll be like regressing to what used to be cool. And it's the same with marketing tactics. So you'll always hear, hey, you should be on TikTok. You should be on TikTok. It's like by the time you hear about it, it's no longer the best thing to be on. Whilst everyone starts to talk about it, if your barber tells you that you should be on TikTok ads, it's already over. The trend is already gone. And yeah, we look at very practical tactics, and a ton of clients like they bring up with us, hey, I've got a friend who does this, and then they've got a Pinterest thing which leads to this funnel, and then it does this, and I'm like, it's too complicated. I mean, we're seeing cheaper cost per clicks with static images than we are with video reels now on Facebook. And we can get conversions cheaper with a static image than we can with reels. So as everyone jumps onto this trend of like advertising in video, oh, you need to be on video. You've got to be on video. Like something else is happening over here, which is a ton of people getting super, super cheap leads by just using static images, doing what the old thing used to be.
Interesting. So, Geraint, I really appreciate all the time and insight that you've shared and telling your story about transitioning, from Ellusionist into a full service marketing agency. That's a tremendous story. Really enjoyed hearing about that. If folks want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah. So the business is called Method Marketing, but we spell it MTHD. So you can go to mthdmarketing.com or Google MTHD marketing, or even Google Method Marketing. You'll probably see an ad for us anyway. But yeah, I mean, you can grab me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, just search Geraint Clarke and I'll be there.
And what's an ideal client for you?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the ideal client for us is someone that we can actually help. So that kind of seems to be, at the moment, people between $5 million in revenue or people who are just starting a business. So if you're just starting and you've got nothing done, you need a website, you need a logo, you need ads, you need everything. That's, an ideal avatar for us because we can help. And then if you're already running a business and you're kind of in that sweet spot of like 1 to 5 million and you can't grow and your ads aren't performing as good as they used to and your website's not converting as well as it used to, usually people are bringing us in and we can get quick wins with those.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Geraint. If listeners, you've learned something, you've laughed at something we've talked about today, please share this podcast. Tell other agency owners that the Marketing Agency Power Hour exists and get it in the hands of other people. Well, and Geraint, really thank you again for the time you spent with us today.
Well, Cal, before you go, I'd love your opinion, because obviously you're interviewing so many people now in the marketing space. What's the one nugget that you've taken from the last, 3 episodes that you've done that's really stuck with you and maybe you've applied to your own business?
Um, yeah, one thing I'm definitely hearing is focusing on a niche, a target niche, target client profile, and being really good at that, and not trying to be all things to all people. And I feel like that's a path that we've been going down in SmartBooks. Sometimes it feels like I'm steering a battleship and it takes a while to move in a different direction, but we've definitely focused on, trying to increasingly focus on supporting the accounting and bookkeeping and tax needs of marketing agency owners. And so, it's interesting to hear that a lot of these owners that I'm speaking to have kind of narrowed down their target profile and who they work with, kind of at the same time that I'm trying to do something similar at SmartBooks.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a lot easier not only to advertise online, but also to convert, because a lot of people might visit your website and they want something in particular. And if you seem to answer it, you're speaking to that person directly. And now there's a bond, there's a trust formed. So
And
yeah, the positioning is really important.
and it's a balancing act too, because I hate, like all business owners, you hate to turn away business that you think you could successfully serve
Yeah.
outside of your ideal, quote unquote, ideal target profile, right? And so it's always, push and pull, but we're trying to do our best to focus. But they're enticing things that are hard to say no to sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough one, but every single time that I've made a concession, it's always ended up being more work than it's worth. So, we did have a client of ours they were like, well, if you're as good as you say you are, then you could just work for free. And then I'll give you the money if you can achieve those goals. And then we're like, okay. So like our egos were immediately ignited. We're like, okay. And then we took them on and suddenly they were like, oh, and I need this as well. And I need you to do video. And I need you to do this. By the way, can you get in touch with my team while I'm in Thailand, being busy? And it was like, well, we've turned from running your ads to now doing video, website, and managing your team whilst you're away. Like, it was just, they moved the goalpost. It went too far. So yeah, anytime I've gone outside of that parameter that I've set myself, it always bites you. So yeah, saying no to customers is as important as saying yes to customers.
Very true. So thanks again, Geraint. This has been another exciting episode of the Marketing Agency Power Hour. We'll see you all next time. Another episode in the books. Thank you so much for tuning in. For show notes and more, please visit marketingagencypowerhour.com. This show is sponsored by SmartBooks, providing marketing agencies with bookkeeping, accounting, and finance support. With SmartBooks, you gain the clarity and confidence to make your agency a success. Until next time.